are amazing because our passion is limitless and our drive is intense. Therefore, you will not deny your grind. You are now watching the Faith Grind Inspire podcast with your host, Dr. Gina Lurk.
Welcome back to another great episode of Faith Grind Inspire. I am your host, Gina Lurk, and today we have a special friend, one of my good friends, my man Troy.
Yes,
I call
sir.
him Trouble T.
Yes,
but
sir.
now he's like Troy the executive, right?
Hey, we're trying to do what we do, man. We're trying to do what we
Yo,
do.
man, I'm so proud of you, man. Like,
Same, man, same.
We've known each other for over 14 years.
Correct.
And
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a long time since the Hamptons. Jay did it.
Jay did it.
You know?
Man. So we had some good times out there, man.
It's been a great run, man.
You know?
And it continues. It continues.
So this podcast, right? It's all about the mindset of entrepreneurs, right?
Absolutely.
So I wanted to bring you on here because number one, you're an entrepreneur, but also two, you have the corporate life too. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So I wanted to bring you on so you could discuss how you balance things, how you started your own rum.
Yes.
You know, I want to hear that story.
Yes.
You know, share with the people. And tell them about the grind. Tell them about how you feel like, you know, you don't like the word the grind, so you use something else.
Yeah.
But I appreciate it, so I love it.
Absolutely.
So I want to share that too. So let's first start off. Where are you from?
I'm from New York, man. So originally grew up in Long Island.
Long Island.
Central Islip to be exact.
CI.
CI to be exact.
Suffolk County boy.
Suffolk County boy.
All right.
That's
Deer
right.
Park
That's
in the
right.
building.
There we go. There we go.
CI,
2 towns
I love
away
that.
on the
I
train,
know.
baby. 2 towns away on the LIRR.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I would say, you know, humble beginnings, right? Grew up in a house with my mother, my father, and my brother. You know, full family structure. Was instilled since a young age to not allow anyone to tell you how far and how fast you can go somewhere. So, you know, with myself and my brother coming up, there's a you know, large age gap between the both of us. So I think when my brother went to college, I was 5. So there's about an 11-year gap between the both of us. My brother was a sports celebrity, and I was a guy who was, you know, kind of heading the books. So it's been a long journey, man. You know, going the corporate route. My brother and I actually started our own spiced rum business.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Let's slow down.
Yeah, Spice
Well,
Rum.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love
Spice
that.
Rum Company, man. It's called Devil's Reef. It's a cinnamon-infused spiced rum.
And it's really good.
It's very good.
It's very good.
80 proof. It's very good if I do say so myself, but, you know, I always let the people be the judge.
No, I'm saying it. It's very good. It's very good, bro.
Listen, it doesn't seem like we've had any bad reviews just yet. So you know, we're on our way.
Yeah.
But it's about legacy and it's about family for me. So as I balance, you know, as you alluded to earlier, the corporate grind versus the entrepreneurial grind, it's really about, you know, building that brand and building a company around Devil's Reef. Which is K Street Spirits, was really about, you know, my brother and I having something, a legacy to leave to the rest of our family as well.
So, how did you don't just pop up and you make a spice rum?
Correct.
How did this happen?
Man, so it probably goes back about, I'd say now, probably about 13 years. I worked in the music industry for a time, right? I kind of saw the trajectory of how spirits were associated with artists and how artists were able to blow up spirits in venues, and just looking at that there was no one really in the space that was an entrepreneur of color in the space of spirits, from soup to nuts, right? So I think you see a lot of the brand ambassadorship, you see a lot of the Diddy's of the world who are a part of a brand, but not necessarily soup to nuts starting their own product from the ground up, creating the flavor, you know, going and working with the actual company to get or procure the spirit, and doing everything from the bottom to the top. So, you know, in looking at that, I actually was a huge cognac fan back in the day. Everybody drinks Hennessy, right? So found my way to work with somebody about 13, 14 years ago around just, you know, that industry. And it failed miserably. So it failed miserably. So, you know, went through a lot of legal trepidation to try and get back the IP that I did have at the time. And probably about 4 years ago now, went about trying to reproduce the flavor profile that I had back then, and was unsuccessful. So, you know, with, you know, I think, there's always a great challenge when you want to do great things. And so I was unsuccessful and ended up, inadvertently using the flavor profile that was contained in spiced rum and didn't know it. And so my brother, I got with my brother, funny enough, is I had to get my mother to get my brother to be involved in the product. Right, so my brother actually worked in alcohol distribution when I was in college, and when I initially had the idea, he kind of was like, the older brother thing, right? Okay, it sounds great, but have a lot of ideas, and let's see what happens and how far you want to take it. So I actually had to get my mother to call my brother back to her house and sit him down to actually try the product. And when he did, he was blown away. And he was like, look, I've got some folks who are consultants that we can take it into them and we can kind of see what they say. And that was kind of the formation of the product set. Spice rum in particular, that wasn't the place that we wanted to go originally. We were actually looking at, again, cognac, because we were, in our, I was in my 30s at the time. And so that was the place I wanted to do, have a cigar, have a cognac, right? And that was the thinking and the thought process. Fast forward probably a year and a half into the product set, the consulting company that we hired was like, look, rum is actually taking off, right? So, and if you look at rum and you look at the subcategories of rum, flavored rum and spiced rum, those in particular were the two that made sense financially for us to go into business as. And so we switched gears, right? And
that's what happens. A lot of times where, you have a vision, but sometimes God has another plan.
Agreed. Agreed.
And God's plan, when God laughs when we say, "Oh, I have a plan." Like, no, I have a plan. You want to listen to me. Right. Like, so you wanted to go down cognac, and he was like, "Nah, you know what? Do the spice rum thing."
Yeah.
And it's interesting when it comes to success, like a huge success. You're gonna turn around, you're gonna tell the story, and people are gonna be like, "What? This was an accident?" Like,
right. Right. But not only that, I mean, I'm a big proponent of trusting. I'm a very big proponent of the people aspect of it and the process. Right. You go and you as you make these mistakes, you learn things about not only the people but the process. Right. So trusting Gene Alert to do the branding of your organization. You have to trust that Gene is an expert in doing the branding first.
Absolutely.
Before you go into business and do business with Gene. And that's the thing, right? You have to trust someone to take your vision and bring it to life. And a lot of times I think people make the mistake of, maybe you want to put your friend on and they're just okay. No. But in reality, just like in any business, right, you hire experts to do the auditing of your company. Right, you don't hire, your buddy off the street to audit your multi-million-dollar company.
No.
Right, you go to maybe a PricewaterhouseCoopers, right, or someone along those lines, right, to do the auditing of your large multi-million-dollar organization, because you need to understand that if something happens or something goes wrong, that they're going to be equally as responsible to, handle that hardship as you are. Right, and I think that's the mistake that a lot of people make is, we want to put our friends on, we want to put our family on, but they may not be the right person for the business. And that's okay, because they can learn as they go, but also it's up to you that, hey, if you want to be an auditor, then you need to go work with these guys or shadow these guys to learn the process first. Right, and that's the difference between, how you step towards success versus, faltering all along the path, right?
I love it, man.
Hey, man, that's what we're here for.
Growing up, right, you said you were in the music business. Like, what were you doing?
Yeah, so I did promotions for a very large artist for about 5 years.
Really?
I won't mention the artist's name, but the folks who know me, they know who it is. So I did promotions for a very long time. After doing those promotions, I actually started my own entertainment company with a business partner of mine in Atlanta named Sean. And we basically started doing events. So we started doing parties in Atlanta and New York. And it worked out very well. And we kind of, parlayed that into working with artists in studios and getting them to do events in clubs.
How did a kid from Suffolk County, because they don't think Long Island boys could do it, but we do it all the time. Yeah. But how does a guy from Suffolk County get into entertainment, working with a big artist, start a production company or a promotion company doing events in Atlanta and New York? Like, how does that start? Like, what kind of mindset? What mindset? Because you're like an hour and 20 minutes away from the city. Like, what was going through your mind? You know what I'm saying? Because, I'm really trying to get into so I can help these other kids, like coming up and people just like,
Yeah, Yep. So
how does it work?
So it starts with I went to school at NYU.
Okay,
right?
so you went to college,
I went to
in the
college
city. All right, so that was your way in.
That was my way in. I went to college in the city, and it was really about just staying in the mindset of almost a Manhattanite, right?
Yeah.
To your point, the grinders, right? The hustlers. And I don't use those terminologies, and we'll get into that and why. But the idea that if you want to do great things, you have to set yourself to be around great people.
Absolutely.
Right. The one thing that I would say, and I think and I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. There's a certain comfortability level in growing up in Long Island, right?
True.
It's very different than the comfortability level of someone growing up in the projects, for instance, right? The Bigby reference, either you sling crack rock or you got a wicked jump shot, right? You're not there in a house in Long Island with both your parents, right? You're comfortable for all intents and purposes, right? You might have went to Catholic school, you might have went to public school in the district, but you have an opportunity to almost, you have more of an opportunity to almost get out because your parents made that decision to move you out of the projects or move you out of the inner city to create a better life. And I think for me, I was always looking for that next step, right? I always try to think 3 steps ahead, right? So even in my corporate environment, I don't want to look at my direct, boss or director for leadership. I want to look at him in certain aspects, but I also want to look at the guys who he's looking towards for leadership. Right? Because ultimately, if I want to understand the true value of the business, I've got to look at the guys who make those business decisions. And so, growing up in Long Island, I always said, look, you've got the kids who live, maybe in the Islips or the Hamptons of the world or the Cold Spring Harbors, right? And they're wealthy. Right, generational wealth.
Yes.
Right. Then you have the Central Islips, the Deer Parks, the Wine Ranches. We're not generational wealth, so to speak. Right. We are still grinding it out.
Yeah.
Right. For lack of better terminology, and it's really about just trying to put yourself in the Cold Spring Harbor, the Hamptons, the Garden City, family mentality. Right. And how did they get that mentality, and how did they get there? Right. It seems very simple, but I think mentally it becomes challenging if you don't see this as your lifestyle over and over again, right? So I just tried to make it so that I was always going to be around those decision makers, those Hamptons folks, those Cold Spring Harbor folks, those Garden City folks, right? Those Upper East Side, Upper West Side folks, right? Where the money was, not even the money, the wealth was generational, right? They think differently.
They do.
Right.
And what's so funny, as I'm thinking about this, is bringing us back to why we used to spend summers in the Hamptons and why we used to, it was like, on Tuesday nights, it was like industry night.
Right.
And we didn't really party on Fridays and Saturdays with the, what we call them, bridge and tunnels.
The bridge and tunnel crowd.
Yeah, we didn't do that.
Right.
But
But there is a mindset to it, Reggie. And I think you remember, right? We walked in those parties in the Hamptons. It was, 3 black guys in the party, right? Right? Truthfully, there's 3 black guys in the party. But if you knew about the party, then there was something about you that people wanted to understand.
Yeah.
Right?
Like,
how do you know about the party?
And
what do you do?
Yeah. And what
right?
do you do?
Oh, I'm Gene Alert. I work for ACA, right? This is what I do, right? I'm Jeff Pope. I'm a Giant player, right? I won a Super Bowl. This is what I do. This is my man Troy Biggs. He does this.
Yeah.
That comfortability is almost automatic because you're in the know.
Yeah.
Right? And you're able to have those conversations.
It's true.
Right? So, being able to have that intelligent conversation, yes, I grew up in Deer Park, or yes, I grew up in Detroit, and I went to go to college, and I got my degree, right? It's a very different discussion that a Jeff Pope has today versus what he had when we were going to the Hamptons.
Absolutely.
Right? It's a very different discussion that Gene Alert has today versus what we were doing in the Hamptons back then. Same as for me. And I think there's a level of respect to that, and then there's a level of identification to it. Right? And that mindset is really about identifying with, identifying with those gaps that you may feel that you possess, and trying to fill those gaps with the best knowledge available to you, right? And a lot of times I think in our culture, we don't have enough individuals that are, kind of put in the limelight to be able to show that mindset. Right, show that yes, you can be an executive at a major corporation and be, a rum runner, right, and run your own organization or run your own company. You don't get that depiction in popular media, right? You have to come to, a podcast like Faith Grind Inspire to actually be able to view that and see it in real life. And then the authenticity of it, right? If you see Gene or Troy out, we have the same demeanor outside of these walls as we do inside the walls. We're the same person. There's nothing generic about it. It's very authentic. And we need more of that in the community, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of, I think, as I've gotten older, that's kind of what I'm trying to do is look, tell the children, you don't, your son doesn't need to think about being on the corner or playing basketball or football, right? Your son has an in the home person who is doing and has done multiple things outside of the normal trajectory that is depicted in popular media for people of color. And we need more of that in media, right? We need more of those entrepreneurs, more of those, faithful, trustworthy, realistic, authentic people that are not taking the, and I won't say the easy way out, but what popular media deems is the easy way out for our culture, right?
Absolutely. It's we have to create. What I noticed while we actually, attend certain events, or, you just start seeing that they expose their kids different. It's not like, oh, I did this, so my son has to start over.
Right.
In a lot of these other, when we say generational wealth, they're not letting their kids start over.
Right.
They're building on. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
That's the difference.
Right.
You don't hear a lot of people say, well, when I die, they got to figure it out.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, this is my money, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, no. Even, you hear the Bill Gates and, I'm donating my money to charity. Yeah,
right.
You are, but you're not leaving your kids in the poorhouse.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
While you're alive,
right.
Like, you're introducing them to, they're still Gates. They're still the Buffett's family.
Right.
Like, they still, you know what I'm saying? Like, we hung out with the Buffett kids. Like, these people are not, like, broke. You know what I'm saying? But and their parents teach them how to make money, how to build, and how to network, and how to start and establish themselves in society.
Right.
And that's what we are doing.
Right. And it's become a social norm. And I think, and I'll get into, just, my ideas around, kind of the terminologies, right? You don't hear, Buffett's kids, saying, I'm going to grind, I'm going to hustle. Right.
No.
And and here's the thing, right? I'm very aware of words and I'm a writer, right? So I'm very aware of words and the trajectory that words have and the impact that they have on people, right? Although we can put a positive spin on the term grind or hustle, right? That word in itself is very particular, right? So you take hustle, right? I was telling a gentleman from Cal State the other day, I said, I don't use the term hustle. And he said, why? And I said, because, when I played football, my coach never had to tell me to hustle to the line of scrimmage because I was always running.
Always running.
Right?
Yeah.
Hustle to me is temporary, right? It means that you have to step up, right? Because you're slowing down.
You slowing down.
Right? I don't want to slow down, right? So when it comes to running to the line of scrimmage from the huddle, I'm going to run to the huddle, and I'm going to run to the line of scrimmage. So I don't have to be told to hustle to the line of scrimmage. And it's the same way in life, right? Yeah. You don't, hustle is temporary, right? You don't, hustling your way into, hustlers on the corner don't want to be on the corner.
No.
Right? To Jay-Z's point, right? Hustling third person, right? I don't want to be on the corner. I don't want to be there in the street with these guys where I've got to, carry my gun and watch my back, right? They want to get away from that, right? And I think when you change that narrative and when you change that, terminology, you have to grow up, right? The idea of grinding, I think of, grinding gears in an automobile, right? I learned how to drive stick shift, right? They told you, don't grind the gears,
don't grind
right?
the gears,
because you're creating resistance against, the force that wants to move forward, right? So why do I want to, logically, why do I want to create force against my forward movement, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to grind, right?
Yeah.
I want, again, I want it to be a generational knowledge point, right? I want to continue to flow. I don't want to grind and I don't want to hustle. I want something that's going to be long term, right? I want to have those discussions. I want to get into those meeting rooms. I want to talk to those individuals. And I'm not going to use that terminology, I'm not going to say I'm grinding it out to the CEO of, a bank.
That's true.
Right? I can't terminology.
I've never said that in front of one of my corporate clients.
Right. Right.
I use the word grind, especially in this show, it's because I didn't want to say work, faith, work, inspire.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like I wanted to attract, attract a certain group of people to start listening, and
Right.
sometimes you have to use certain terms
So they're aware.
So they're aware, because if I
Absolutely.
said what I really wanted to say,
They don't see the synergy with the terminology.
exactly.
So
Even when I
listen,
say faith, everyone's like, "Oh, this is a religious show."
Right.
And I'm like, "No, it's not it's not a religious show." You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to have faith in yourself. Yeah, there's some religious undertones to it. Inspire. So there's two words in there
Right.
that, some might consider, but it's just, for me, it's more I want to be able to get you in. You know what I mean?
But I think in your world, right? And I think you've done a tremendous amount, right? Like applause to you, because you've done a tremendous amount just from, again, humble beginnings, right? And you've always led with the idea that you have to have faith in the process. You have to trust the process.
Absolutely, from
right?
day one.
And in order for you to get somewhere, to your point, as you're speaking to the youth, right, which you've been a youth ambassador for years, right? They understand the terminology grind, right? We're going to teach them to move away from that,
Yep.
right? But to draw them in, they need to understand
They
what
need
that
to-
terminology grind means,
Exactly.
right? And then when they hear these kind of discussions, they understand that, okay, maybe grind is short term.
Exactly.
Right? Maybe I need to, be looking. I tell people, I said, if I ever fail at being an entrepreneur, I can always be a 6-figure executive. That's not a bad fallback plan.
Yeah.
Right? That's not a bad fallback plan. And that's what people should be thinking about as people of color, right? I want every single listener, every single person watching to instill in themselves that they need to not only level up, but they need to level the playing field, right? If you're going to have a 9-to-5, even if you're going to create your own business, right? There are certain people, and most of those people are going to be people that you want to work with, that want to see that you have a degree, right? They want to see that maybe you went to get your master's, right? They want to see that maybe you understand how to work in a corporate culture, right? They want to see that you understand how to communicate with certain types of people at different levels, right? Those aren't the things that we get from, those are the things that we need to provide from our generation, right? To your point, you don't use hustle or grind when you're in a meeting talking to executives, right? You couldn't use that terminology to get a podcast here in MSG,
No.
right? You've got to discuss what you've done. I've written multiple books, right? I've opened multiple businesses, right? I'm an entrepreneur. I'm business savvy, right? I'm able to communicate in multiple ways with you folks here to make you understand what we're doing as a business model makes sense for your network, right?
It's true.
It's inspirational, right? It's something that, they don't get the opportunity to see guys like us in this building talking about the topics that we talk about, right? And that's a testament to your character, right? But it's also a testament to the process, right? Because you've done the same thing. You've worked in a corporate environment. You've ran your own businesses. You understand, what's going on here. And you're able to kind of step into their shoes and understand what they're going through to be able to put into words that make sense for them, right? And we need our entire culture to be able to do that. Right?
It's true.
Business decisions aren't emotional.
No,
Right?
it's not.
Right.
Now, let me ask you a question, right? So, let's go back to the Spice Room.
Yep.
So, is it easy? Do you still work with your brother on it? Or
I do.
Okay, so
I do.
how's that? Because a lot of times they say working with family is tough.
I'll tell you, it's my brother is my brother. So my brother was my hero growing up, right? My brother played professional athletics. He was one of the replacements in the Redskins. He just recently, about 10 weeks back, was presented with the Super Bowl ring from the Redskins Super Bowl they won. The movie Replacements was about guys like him.
Nice.
Right? And he always epitomized the balance of home and business. And quality of life, right? It was something that, when I was struggling in the corporate environment of where I fit and what I wanted to do, I would always call him on the phone and say, hey, so here's what I'm thinking. What do you think? Right? And his answer was always, well, how's it going to affect your quality of life? Right? And that's something that I don't think everybody has a luxury of doing. And I think, I'm very cognizant of that. So, running a business with him is you have the typical trials and tribulations you have working with a family member, right? I think, few and far between for he and I. There's, we've been, friends, for as long as I can remember. Bought me my first pair of Jordans when my parents wouldn't buy them because they cost too much money. He was that guy for me. And we have different skill sets, right? So my brother,
I like that.
my brother can talk to anybody. he can sell anybody, right? And he doesn't have to sell them because the product is just good, right? And those skill sets
And he
help
has
us
the
to run the business.
personality. Exactly.
Right? And those skill sets help us sell the business. I'm very analytical. I'm very non-emotion driven in business, right? I look at the bottom line. When I walk into a retail store, I go into a retail store and I say, look, so I want you to take this product. What do I need to do to help you move the product, right? Here's your price point. What do you think is going to be the price point for your consumer? You know your consumer. I'm not going to make any assumptions, right? If it's going to take, one of your store guys to come in and make cocktails during a tasting time, right? I'll pay your sales guy. Right? I want to help you sell more product, right? I want to send my boys over here to come buy something to drink, right? I want to, give you your own recipes that maybe are local to your local neighborhood that make sense for the culture that's in your neighborhood, right? All those things that make them understand that, I want to get into the boat with them, right? We're paddling down the river together, right? And I try and do that. My brother and I try and do that with every venue that takes us in, right? Work with what, they understand their business model to be and work to help them sell through the product, because ultimately it's good for me and it's good for them, right?
I love it.
Yeah.
Yo, man, that's great, man. Like, I'm just so proud of you, man, because I remember, when because you had this product in the works,
Yeah.
and we were rolling around, and all of a sudden, like, you come to the house, we were watching the finals.
Yep.
And you were like, hey guys, look. It was like, yo, it's here. So to see where it started to where it is, the process, people don't get it, man. It's difficult. It's difficult. And especially the liquor business. There's you have like Southern Wine Spirits, you have what's the other one? Empire.
Yep.
You have those, then you have a lot of other distributors. So the competition's out there.
It is. But what? It's you bring up a good point. I mean, we're a boutique brand for all intents and purposes, right? So we're distributed through a company called MHW, which is actually also out of Long Island, right? I don't want to boil the ocean, right? But I also set my sights on the big sites, right? So I look at every month, and maybe I shouldn't do this. Every month I look at the top selling global liquor brands, right? The number one and the number three brand have not changed, I think, in the last decade.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's soju, right? This stuff is sold in Korea only, right? They sell 4 times more soju in just Korea than the next number 2 brand globally.
Wow.
So when I think about, yeah. I mean, look, for the folks out there, do your research, right? Google, top selling global alcohol brands, right? Soju is number 1 for the past, it's been, I think, number 1 and number 3, and number 1, number 4 for the past, decade.
Amazing.
Right? And incrementally growing, right? And I'm like...
And they only sell
in Korea.
In Korea.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a monstrous number. It's like, I think they sold 72 million cases in just Korea this past year, right? I think the next was one of the other products like Bacardi or Smirnoff, right? And they were 27 globally.
Do you think it's because North Korea doesn't allow
It's possibly,
yeah,
right. But I mean, just think about I don't I don't even think about the negative aspects of it. Right? I think about what are they doing to be able to sell that much in this one place.
Yeah.
Who are they talking to?
Yeah, who are they talking to?
What are those conversations
And even if you can't, even if there is no other competition, that's a lot of alcohol.
Right. Right.
To consume.
Right. But I mean, just in Korea alone.
Wow.
Right?
But number 1 in the world?
In the world.
Jeez.
In the world. And I mean, I've checked it for the past at least 5 years, and they've been number 1 for the past 5 years. Right? I think one year was Emperador Brandy, which was only sold in one particular country. I think this year number 2 was some product that's sold in Thailand only or something like that, right? But the idea that again, I'm always in my mind, what are those conversations like at that level?
Yeah.
Right. How do you increase from maybe 45 million cases to 70 million cases over the course of 2 to 3 years?
2 to 3 years.
If I'm a liquor store and I'm like, look, I take in 100,000 400,000 cases a year. Now you want me to take in 400,000 cases a year, and I'm able to move those 400,000 cases a year. How does that happen?
Yeah, how does that happen?
Right?
Yeah.
And that's the mindset that I take into every experience, every meeting, right? Every retail store, on or off premise location that I go into with my products in, right? I've got to have those conversations. And I'm not a middleman guy either, right? I want to talk to the manager. I want to talk to the owner, right? I want to explain the product.
And you're going in. I love it.
I'm going in.
Yeah.
Right? I'm gonna sit down. I'm gonna have a drink with you of my product. I'm gonna have your bartender taste it and tell me what he thinks is gonna go with it. I want him to tell me what he thinks is gonna sell in your venue, right? And try that.
We have a new segment, right?
Yep.
Where we're asking people to give us questions. So today's listener question comes from Michael, and from Brooklyn, and from Brooklyn, and he says. What was the biggest hurdle of, like, how easy is it to get licensing for alcohol?
Not easy. in terminology. So with alcohol in general, there's a ton of trademark patent work you have to do, not only just for your brand and the logo and the typeface and those things, but you also have to go through the FDA. And we had a challenge in the beginning with the coloring of the product. So we had to add caramel color because essentially, I guess, rum is only clear or caramel colored. Don't ask me why. But, that's one of the challenges. The other thing is, you got to do things like pay taxes on the entire amount of product you want to sell before you even sell it, which is a huge monetary hurdle, right? So there's a lot of things that you go through just in the process. A lot of legalities. We're actually going through something right now relative to legal trials with clothing items, right? That there's a company out there that doesn't want us to use the name on items of clothing.
Interesting.
Right? So
So these are the things that, as an entrepreneur, like when you're, starting a brand, or even when you're on, say, social media.
Yep.
You see people, saying certain things or trying different things, but then all of a sudden, they don't think about, well, I'm making a rum. I put my logo on a T-shirt, but then now another company's hitting you like, hey, you can't do that.
Well, that's what your lawyer's for.
That's what the lawyer's
right?
for.
That's what your company lawyer's for.
Let me ask you a question. What are like 3 pieces of advice that you would give an entrepreneur right now?
I would have a clear understanding of your business strategy and your business model, and write it down, and stick to it, right? But be willing to augment or change that business strategy based on your research and your due diligence in the marketplace. And I think 2 and 3 would be have an incredible accountant and have an incredible lawyer, right? And talk to them regularly. I talk to my lawyer and my accountant probably at 2 to 3 times a month at the minimum. I go in and see my accountant and I see my lawyer all the time, and we keep discussing aspects of the business and things that are going to make sense moving forward from a long-term strategy perspective. Right? The key to remaining long-term is just to continue to look at your strategy and see if it fits where you're going. We're in the process of changing our strategy now. We're in the process of changing our labeling for the next go-around, because we learned a lot of things on the first go-around, right? The label doesn't pop on the shelf when it's dark, right?
True. Especially if the liquor's dark.
Right. The label doesn't work well in the club if it's, under the bar or not on the top shelf, right? Things like, how they pour the bottle, right? Or certain things that make sense in certain venues and not in others, right? Don't have them overpour, right? We're an 80 proof cinnamon-infused spiced rum, right? You don't want to overpour. It's not like vodka, right, where it just gets really strong. The flavor changes, right? So we have very particular, instructions on how you make very great drinks, and you don't need to overpour because 80 proof goes a long way. Yeah. Right?
Wow. Man, Troy, I wish we had more time. Thank you for coming on as a guest.
Thank you for having me.
No problem, man. Much success. So tell people where they can find you.
Absolutely. So www.thedevilsreef.com is the website for the brand. At The Devil's Reef on Instagram and at The Devil's Reef on Twitter. And we're also on Facebook, The Devil's Reef Cinnamon Spice Rum.
Okay, cool. So once again, thank you, Troy, for coming on. Support him. Support Devil's Reef. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Faith Grind Inspired Podcast. Thank you to our producers, Tim and Jamie and Taylor. Shout out to Brianna, the OG Podcast Network. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us, podcast@faithgrindinspired.com. Catch us every Wednesday. Peace.